Hey everybody, this is Melanie and welcome back to another episode of the Board Game Specialist. We are now on episode 27 and this week I am flying solo because Carla is on vacation. So we normally talk about what game we've played and honestly I have played nothing. Not a single game. We're in the middle of moving. So we've moved now. We're in the new house. The whole basement's going to be the board game room, and I'm super excited about it. I've got 2 5x5 Calyx. I have 2 1x4. I have a couple of different shelves that are similar to that one, but it's not a Calyx, and there's 2 2x3s in those ones. And I had 26 boxes filled to the brim of board games. And I don't mean like little boxes. That would have been reasonable and easier to move, but half of them were like 5 cubic feet boxes, and those are huge. So in total there was 26 of them, and so far I've unpacked 20 of them. Now I've decided that it'd be cool to do an unboxing of each of the box to kind of showcase my whole collection. So this is really slowing down the unboxing process. So 20 boxes have been unpacked right now and just kind of quickly put on the shelf somewhere, so they're not organized in any way whatsoever. And now the 2 2x3s aren't really filled hardly at all right now, so I still have all of that. And the 1 5x5 Calyx has most of the bottom 2 rows open, but I've got 6 boxes to go. I'm like wondering, oh my, do I have enough space? Now, worst comes to worst, there is room to add another 5x5 Calyx in that room. But do I want to? I think I'm sitting at about 450 board games right now. And if I get a whole new, I don't know. We'll see how the next or the last 6 unboxing goes and how that's gonna go. But you know what, it's been kind of a fun process. I'm like itching to be done unboxing so I can start organizing them. And I'm wondering, how do you guys organize your games? Because I've done it many different ways. So I've organized by color, where it all kind of goes from like white to yellow and to orange and to red. And then I gotta say, that looks stunning. It is so beautiful when you do it that way, but it's so hard to find any game. And then all of your Catans are spread out and all of your code names are spread out because all of those boxes are very different colors. So it's not the most reasonable way to pack your games, but it looks good. I've done it alphabetically, which makes the most sense when you're like, hey, which game you guys are looking for? It's like, oh, let's find as well. Oh, that'd be in the A's. So you go in the A's section. Works great that way. Visually, not the most pleasing to look at. And then I've done by size, where I've put all the biggest game on the bottom and kind of slowly put so they would be kind of the more like straight lines, and that is definitely visually pleasing. This time around, I think I want to kind of pack stuff or organize stuff a little bit more like the type of games. So any games that are 2-player only, I want to put those together in one spot. Games that are campaign, that you kind of have to play multiple games, kind of follow the scenarios and stuff, where to me those ones makes the most sense with just 2 players, or like the players that you can commit long term. I want to put those kind of apart as well. I'm thinking of putting app-driven games on their own as well. I don't know. So I'm still kind of pondering on how that's all going to work. Do leave us a comment. Let us know how you guys have your games organized. But so let's get talking about the episode. Because I'm flying solo, I decided that I would take this episode to talk a little bit about my partnership that I have with Games and Couples. So I've started this partnership at the start of the year, probably around the time we started this podcast as well, or maybe a little bit before. And it was interesting. They've reached out to me. Now, Games and Couple is a counseling company, or I guess company, counseling group that is based out of Edmonton, Alberta. And they concentrate, or one portion of what they do concentrates on doing counseling for couples, and they utilize board games as a way for couples to be able to connect with each other. And I think that is amazing. They reached out to me and said, hey, we've been noticing all what you've been posting, what you've been doing. We really like what you do. We'd love for you to be part of what we do. And I gotta say, this really touched close to me. I don't know, my longest relationship I started in 2000 when I moved to Alberta, and we got married in 2004, and I was married for 14 years, so I was in that relationship for 18 years. And things were on the most part really good, but my spouse got into a bad depression towards the end, and he just kind of, and it was like the stereotypical aspect of it, where he just would not deal with it, would not acknowledge it, would not take the help that he needed for it, and it was just kind of getting a little bit worse and worse, to the point where things just got really bad. And then at one point something happened that ended the relationship, and it took me by surprise. Like, I knew he was struggling, but I thought us as a couple were strong. And then at one point we weren't. And one of the first thing I did when, you have an 18-year relationship that unexpectedly ends, that's going to mess you up a little. So one of the first thing I did is I contacted mental health and arranged for counseling for myself. And then, so I was going into counseling. I'm on my own with my kids during that time. He had moved out. And I'm kind of rebuilding myself. And when the kids were when the kids were home, I would cope. When the kids were not home, I would really struggle, and I could not stay home by myself in an empty house. So I did it. I went out. I went to game stores. I connected with people, played board games. And board game was such an amazing escape for me, because when I was playing for those 2, 3, 4 hours, whatever long I played for, my life wasn't a mess. For that period of time, all I'm doing is concentrating on the game. I'm either trying to destroy Tokyo, or I'm trying to stop the pandemic, or whatever it is the game I'm doing. And you get so involved into that it kind of clears everything else that was so messed up behind. And I remember when I was in counseling one day, and then my counselor asked me how I coped, and that's what I said. I said, I play board games. And she says, oh, I love it. She's like, it's great because it's social. It's not destructive in any way. I think you should play as much as you can. I was like, okay, because I'm playing a lot. And honestly, like, I was into board games already by then. I had a significant collection, but I really threw myself into it. It was my lifeline during that time. So when Games and Couples reached out to me, I love the concept of what they did, and I reached back saying, I love what you guys are doing. I'd love to be part of it. I should point out, I'm divorced. Now I am in a new relationship. Now things are going amazing. Board games a big part of my couple life, but actually, what Games and Couples, like, it kind of gives you a good insight. We actually that kind of makes you perfect for what we're looking to do. So then I got involved with them, and then basically what I do is I will showcase a game every week that a couple could play. And also, Games and Couples have created a rating system specifically for how to rate a game for different couples, and they rate every games on 3 different aspects. So the first one is on conversation and connection potential. So when you sit down with your partner to play a game, how much opportunity is there to hold a conversation and to connect with your partner? And this is a rating that goes from 1 to 5. Now keep in mind, 1 is not bad, 5 is not good. It really depends on where you are as a couple. So if this is the time of day where you guys kind of unwind, come together, connect, and then find out about each other's day, that sort of stuff, having a game that has a high connection potential or conversation potential makes sense for you guys. So then you can connect and recoup and kind of catch up with each other. Now, if you are a couple where things are a little tense, things flare up fairly easily, and then as you're having conversation, things gets brought up and turns into fights easily, maybe you want to have something that's on the lower scale there, where you still come together, spend quality time together, but minimize the potential for flare-ups. So having a lower score in that rating in those particular situations, that's good. Or maybe you guys work together all day long, and then you come home and like, okay, great, let's do something together, but like you've already spent your whole day talking and stuff, and then it's not like you just want something that's a little bit more low-key. Having a lower rating then makes more sense as well, right? The second thing that they rate on is on the getting to know you. And I mean, some games I do my own thing, you do your own thing, we kind of compare score at the end. Or, there'll be some games where there's definitely more things where you'll kind of pay more attention to each other throughout the game, and then you can kind of discover more stuff about your partner. Right now with the pandemic, like we've been kind of used to living our lives, and maybe you and your partner kind of lived together but didn't actually get to spend that much time together. You're away at work and that sort of stuff, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hits, or your children moves out or whatever, your focus changes, and then all of a sudden you're spending a whole lot more time with each other, and maybe you don't fully know who your partner is anymore. As life goes by, we change, and in this case, having a game where it has a higher score and the getting to know you makes sense. Or maybe new relationship and you're still kind of learning about each other, so having a high score there makes sense as well. Or maybe you've been together a long time, you spend a lot of time together, you know each other, you really know each other, so that might not be as crucial of a point for you. So having a low score in that case is perfectly fine. And then the last thing that the rating does is on potential for hurt feelings and conflict. Let's face it, some of these games are very competitive. Some of these games are very cutthroat, and there can be very take that. And, maybe if you're in a relationship that is strained, that is kind of overcoming hardship right now, maybe taking jabs at each other is not the best time right now. So you'd want something that's on the lower end. Or, maybe you have one of the partner is a little bit more sensitive to that type of thing, or both of you. So maybe this is not where you want to have kind of those big attack or take that or jabs or type of games. Or maybe, you guys are working on conflict resolution, trying to build that as a skill as a in your relationship, and having a controlled environment where that type of stuff can happen and how to overcome makes more sense, and you want to have a higher rating there. And so this rating system is very interesting. So it kind of takes a look at those three aspects. As I'm about to play a game with my spouse, and this is where we are, what should I consider? So now every week, as I mentioned, I do a game of the week that kind of goes through this type of through that rating system, and I've picked this morning my top 9 of all the games that's been reviewed so far with Games and Couples. I mean, be sure to go and check out their Facebook page, Games and Couples Love in the Age of Boardgame, I believe is what it is. I'll put a link on the description of this podcast, but definitely be sure, go check that out, and then kind of look at the other games that's been showcased every week. As well, with them, I do a video series once a month that's called game night, date night, that kind of talks about all the games that's been showcased every week, and then I talk a bit more in depth instead of just like a little written blurb. So let's get into this. So my number 9 of my favorite games that's been showcased in Games and Couple is Ohanami. Now, Ohanami is so pretty. Like, you have all these neat cards that, like, it's very zen. It's a very calming look because it's like watercolors, and you have blues and pinks and greens and grays, and it's very neutral tones, and it's an interesting puzzle. So it's a card drafting game. You have the deck of cards in your hand. Well, 10 cards that you start with, and you're going to select 2 to add to your garden, and you can build up to 3 gardens at a time. Now, the rules with the garden is you can add cards to the top and you can add cards to the bottom. You can't add cards in between cards that have already been played. And you have to maintain numerical order. So you'll look at your cards and you'll select 2, and then you add them to your garden. Then you pass the cards on to your partner, they give you theirs, and then you look at the cards again, and then you'll select 2 more. And you'll do that until all 10 cards have been played. It makes sense to try to get cards that are really close to each other so that you're not creating gaps. If you end up creating a gap, so it's really like you'll put, okay, well, I got 21 here, and I got 24, so that's pretty close. And then you kind of swap cards, and then 23 is right there. It would great in that garden, except you can't put it in between the cards. You can only add to the top or to the bottom. So it's like, well, darn it. So it's interesting, kind of trying to select stuff that are close together, try not to create big gaps. In a 2-player game, it is interesting as well because you see the cards come back to you in one round. In a 4-player games, by the time the cards come back to you, like, a lot of the cards are gone. So it could be like, these would work really well for me. It doesn't look like they would work for my partner, so I'm not going to take them just yet. I'll take these other ones, and I hope that they'll come back to me, and you can have that bit more of extra knowledge. You kind of have an idea of what might be coming back to you, and there's a bit more planning in that way. So then you'll put all 10 cards, and then you score, and you'll do this 3 times and score all 3 times. So the first time you score just the blue cards. The blue cards have the lowest score, but they'll score 3 times. So it does make sense to collect as many blue cards as you can at first, if you can. Then the second one, you're going to score the blue and the green cards, and then on the final score, you score all the cards again. Such a neat game. I really enjoy that. Now, in the rating system, for the conversation and connection potential, this one was given a 3. I mean, you're looking at your cards, you select the cards. So, I mean, there's some thought process that you're going through, and then while you're doing that, you may not be kind of getting too deep into a conversation, but then you pass the cards along. And there's not so much going on that you couldn't hold a conversation while you're playing this game, right? You could totally catch up on each other's day. So with that one, that's why it was given a 3 on the conversation connection potential. In the getting to know you, this one gets a 1. It's all the way down there. This is a game where you're looking at your cards, you're building your own garden, you pass it on, and so on. You're not really paying attention at all to what the other person is doing. So this game isn't going to reveal anything big about your partner because you're kind of playing your own game here. And in the hurt feelings and conflict, I'm also giving this a 1. You're playing your own game. There's really nothing they can do that would purposely damage your game. So it's not a game that kind of has opportunities for kind of take that or messing with each other that would kind of result in potential hurt feelings. So that was my number 9, Ohanami. In the number 8 position, I have Watergate. Now, I've talked about Watergate a few times on the podcast. I just really like this, and the theme is so interesting. If you like historical events kind of game, like, this one is worth looking into. I did not know a whole lot about the Watergate scandals between Nixon and the journalists, kind of trying to expose everything that was going on. So I got looking into it, and this game is so thematic. It's so interesting. So with Watergate, one person plays as the Nixon administration, and their goal is trying to destroy some documents, hush up the whole situation, and get Nixon elected again. Or you'll play as the journalist, and what you're doing is you're trying to discover these information, kind of get proof, documental proof about what's going on, create a link between Nixon and some of the informant that you're kind of connecting with, and expose the whole thing, right? So, and what's really neat about it is this has like a really strong tug-of-war element to the game. So at the start of the game, 3 documents gets put into the middle of the board. And then you have your red token and your white token. And then you'll be playing cards. I'll be like, hey, you can move this one so many spaces towards you. So you're kind of pushing some of the documents towards you or some of the tokens towards you. And you're trying to do that because at the end of the round, when you've played all your cards that are in your hand, whatever document or token is on your side, you get to collect. So as Nixon, you're going to try to pull these documents towards you so that you can add them to the pegboard. That kind of shows all the connection that's getting built to destroy the document and block some of the pathways that are getting built, so that you're, covering your trail. You're creating a hush-up type situation. As a journalist, you would put them face up. Now, face up, they each have a color, and you got to maintain the document into the color area on that pegboard, on the player board. Because, it's information about a certain different topic, so you're trying to create these different link, and then in the board, Nixon's picture is in the middle, and then you have all these different informants around, so you're trying to create the connection to potential informant. But some of the things you can do with your cards is this, like you could do that top action where you're pulling stuff on your side, but then you can also do the bottom action, which is a much bigger action, but doing that destroys the cards. So then the card's out of the game afterwards, because every round, like, you'll be reshuffling and then kind of are getting new cards. So you would have access to less and less cards if you always do the bigger actions at the bottom. But, for Nixon, one of the thing that might be, like, he can buy off informants, so that maybe you're building a link towards this person and then they bought them off, so you can't use that informant anymore and you have to try to use a different informant and so on. It is such a neat, interesting game. I really enjoy this. Now, in the rating system, for the conversation and connection potential, this one gets a 4. Like, you look at your cards, you play the card, it'll move things around, but you can definitely have a conversation while you're playing this game. And then getting to know you, we've given this one a 3. Like, there's a lot more kind of interaction with the other player. You'll kind of see, say, okay, how they're gonna react to some of the stuff that they do. It's like, are they gonna let some stuff slide? Are they like trying to get stuff back? Or or how are they gonna react once you've bought off the informant that they just built a connection to? And so it is interesting to kind of see how they'll handle the situation, how they'll adjust as things change, and you can definitely learn about your partner that way. And the hurt, feelings, and conflict, I'm gonna give this one a 4. This is, like, for you to kind of have this whole path linked, so you can finally start creating a connection between Nixon and then this informant. And as you're about to finish this path, they buy off that informant, and you have to start and build a different path, and that can be frustrating. Or like when they're putting those black documents and they're kind of blocking your path, so if there's already conflict in the relationship, that can just spark stuff up. So keep in mind, this can have a high rating for hurt, feelings, and conflict. And that was my number 8, Watergate. Now, in my number 7 position, I have Targi. Targi is a game that I've heard of so much. It's so often talked about in, like, 2-player game, you gotta play Targi. And I had never played it. So I bought a copy. It's just one of those, like, felt like, oh my God, have you not played Targi? You should have played Targi. Like, it feels like this is one of the classic games. Now, keep in mind, older game, it's not a beautiful, pretty game. All the cards are fairly bland looking. You have your little wooden meeple that you play, and then you have this little disc that you play in it. So the whole game is not beautiful. but it's very satisfying to play. And this is a 2-player worker placement game. And the way that it works is you put the whole grid on the outside, and each round you'll fill in cards in this grid. When you place your workers, you're placing your workers along the outside. And that's going to trigger the action that you place it on, but you place up to 3 workers. And then wherever, like, so if you put it along a column, you kind of look at what's along the column, and you have one on the row. Wherever that imaginary line would connect is where you would put a disc, and you get to activate or collect that card in the grid. It's so unique. I have never come across anything like that. And it's interesting because if you put a worker on a column, the other side now is blocked off. The other player can't put their worker on that same column, so they'll have to try to connect in a different way if they want to try to get those cards. And so it's interesting. And then you're collecting these cards and activating these action. You're collecting resources. You're getting these resources so you can acquire these cards. And you're building a little tableau in front of you that you're going to score at the end of the game. So you're trying to get different combination in your tableau to score as much as you can. Such a neat game. It's like that, like I said, that action selection mechanism is so interesting and unique that I haven't come across, and it really kind of makes you think, like, okay, I'm going to try to go there and there so I can collect this. And at the same time, you have this little robber, I'm not sure what he is, but he goes around the board each round. So it's also kind of a tracker of the rounds, but he blocks the action that he's on. It's so interesting. So for Targi in the rating system, for conversation and connection potential, I've given this one a 4. You place your worker down, they place their worker down, you collect the cards, you collect the resources. There's not a whole lot going on that you wouldn't be able to hold a conversation while playing. So I give this one a 4. In the getting to know you, I give this one a 3. It'll be interesting to see what action they select, or if you kind of you put your actions like, oh darn, I was going to do that, okay, and then how they recoup and how they're going to put, and there's maybe you'll be like, oh okay, he's putting that there, he's probably going for this, and then turns out they were doing something completely different. So it's interesting to see a little bit on how they select and what they're working towards, and for the getting to know you. Hurt feelings and conflict, I'm going to give this one a 3. It's fairly neutral. It can, it can sometimes feels like, okay, are you just placing your meeples to block me because you know what I'm trying to do? Maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not intentional. Maybe it is part of the strategy they're using, trying to minimize the points you get as opposed to maximize the point they get. So that can be an issue, and it can cause some feathers to be ruffled a little bit, right? So that was my number 7, Targi. Now, in number 6 position, I have Azul. Azul is a beautiful game. So as bland as Targi can be, Azul will make up for that. You have all these plastic square tiles or tokens that you'll be pulling out of a bag and playing with. And these are such bright, beautiful pattern, colorful components. And basically in this game, you are building a mosaic. So you'll be collecting all these colorful tiles, adding them to your mosaic. On the bottom row, you need to collect 5 in order to be able to put 1 in, and then 4 and 3 and 2 and 1 so far, and so on. So you're collecting all these different tiles, trying to collect what you need to be able to transfer them into the mosaic that you're trying to build. Now, you cannot have multiple of the same tile on the same row, so you've got to keep it unique. It's a neat game. It's kind of a puzzly game because so you'll have those different factories, I guess, that you're grabbing these tiles from, and when you reach over to grab a tile, you need to grab all of the same color that's available on that one. So if there's 3 blues and 1 orange, and you want the blues, then you have to take all 3 blues, and then the orange, whatever one didn't get picked up, goes into the middle of the table, and those are going to be available. Well, they're available too at any time, but the first person to go and pick from the middle also has to take the first play marker, which gives you the opportunity to draw first in the next round, but it also counts as a negative points because any tiles that you've collected that you can't fit in your in your mosaic, and they have to go on the same row, will count as broken tiles, basically, that you put along the bottom of the floor. And the more of those you have, the more negative points you're going to score that round. Now, for the rating system on this one, for connection and conversation potential, I've given this one a 4. You're selecting tiles, you're not really discussing what you're doing, so the whole conversation can totally be just connecting with your partner. Getting to know you, this is a 1. You're building your own thing, they're building their own thing, so there's not that much interaction in that way. Like, it's more individual plays. And then for hurt feelings and conflict, I'm going to give this one a 2 as well. You're building your own thing. The only thing that can happen sometimes is like, okay, there's only 2 colors left to go. I really can't use the blues, and there's 4 of them there, so I don't want the blues. Take the orange, take the orange. And then they take so you want them to take the blue, and so you can take the orange, and then they go ahead and take the orange anyway, so that leaves you with 4 blues. You can't place them. They all go on your floor, and that gives you a bunch of negative points. That can be a little frustrating. But in the grand scheme of things, that's it. So that's my number 6, Azul. In my number 5 position, I have the Quest for El Dorado. The Quest for El Dorado is really interesting. It's a deck building game that is a race. So in a 2-player game, every player has 2 meeples that they're trying to make through this jungle and to the Golden City. And then the first person to get both their meeples into that wins the game. And you start with your, regular cards, and then you have all these cards that you can purchase from. Now, only so many get into the market to start with, and you can purchase. When one of the piles gets depleted, then the person who depletes that pile gets to pick which other cards they'll bring into the market. It's interesting because you gotta have the card that matches the terrain you're about to go through. And maybe it's jungle, so you'll need the machete. And then, at first maybe you play 1 to go through the 1 tile, but then you'll get into more dense jungle space, so you'll need 2 machetes to make through 1 tile, or 3 machetes to make it through 1 tile, and so on. And then, so you're like, got all this jungle you're going through, so you're collecting all these jungle cards, and then all of a sudden you're in water, and you haven't been collecting the ores to make it through the water tiles, and then it's like, oh, darn it, I don't have the right thing anymore. And you're trying to purchase more of those cards now, but this is a deck building, so they shuffle, and then you don't always get to control what's in your hand. But then they are master of all trade, that you'll have some cards that will actually count for everything, so it is interesting. And then having the 2 meeples, so you can kind of say, okay, you're getting this meeple far ahead, but you got to get that second one moving as well, because even if you get in there first, doesn't make any difference unless they both are in there. So it is a neat, interesting game, the Quest for El Dorado. So for conversation, connection, potential, I'll give this one a 3. You're looking at your card, deciding what you're going to play, what you're going to buy. There is opportunity to have conversation while you play. And then getting to know you, I'm giving this one a 3 as well. It's interesting to see how your partner is going to handle the cards that they've got, and the hurdle that's in front of them. It's like maybe they get stuck and don't have the necessary cards, and just to see how they handle that kind of is interesting. And hurt feelings and conflict, I'm going to give this one a 2. The only way you get into each other's way there in this game is really if you get into each other's ways. Like, okay, great, I want to go through the water here because I've got water cards, but oh no, you moved into there, so I can't move on your space. I got to go around you now. Now you're forcing me to go through this dense jungle, so that really is the only way that you kind of mess with each other in this game. So I think that's fairly low for hurt feelings and conflict. So that's a 2. And that was the Quest for El Dorado. Next one I have in number 4 position is Dice Throne. Dice Throne is amazing. So right now they have Dice Throne Season 1, Dice Throne Season 2, and Marvel Dice Throne has just released. This game does play best as 1 versus 1. So as a game to play with as a couple makes a lot of sense. And so it's neat. You select a character that you want, and then you could be like, whatever appeals to you, whatever theme you like. There's all sorts to pick from here. And then your character all gets their own deck of cards, and they get their own custom dice. This is a beautiful game. The artwork is stunning. So it is interesting. And then it's a battle game. So you will roll your dice. Based on what you've rolled, you'll kind of keep what you want, roll again. You can do that up to 3 times. And then if you've gotten the symbol or numbers that you need, you can activate different attacks that's on your board. You can acquire cards so that you can make some of those attacks more powerful and so on. This is a neat one. Now, for conversation and connection potential, I've given this one a 2, because you're rolling the dice, trying to activate, then you're attacking, and it seems like there's a fair bit going on that you wouldn't really hold a whole lot of a conversation while you're managing all of that. And you could to a point, but not quite as much. In the getting to know you, I'm giving this one a 2 as well. You're not going to make it obvious as to what you're trying to do, which attack you're trying to activate, and so on. So some of the information of what's going on is going to be kind of kept to yourself. So in the getting to know you, I think that's kind of keeps it a little bit on the lower end for that as well. And then for the hurt feelings and conflict, I'm giving this one a 2. And you might be wondering, why am I giving a battle game a 2? And the reason for that is this is in fact a battle game. If you get upset that the other player is attacking you in a battle game, it's a little bit odd to me, because you should be expecting it. What are they going to do on their turn? Well, they're going to try to activate, an attack and attack you. So why would you be upset that that's happening when you know that's what the game is all about? So that's why I'm giving this one for hurt feelings and conflict a 2. Because this is a battle game, you should be expecting it. That's the whole point of the game. So, and it's a great game. So that was number 4, Dice Throne. Now, in the number 3 position, I have Raptor. Raptor's another game that I've mentioned a few times in our podcast. It is such a great game. This is a 2-player only game. And you have one player playing as the scientist, whose goal is to capture the baby raptors so that you can study them. Or you're the mama raptor, and your goal is to get your babies away from those scientists and have them escape. And it is so neat. So each player, or depending on which side you're playing, will have a different set of action that you can activate. And you all have cards that goes from 1 to 9, I believe. And the action selection is really interesting. So you'll kind of shuffle your deck, you'll draw 3 or 4 cards, and then you'll put one face down in front of you, and the partner does the same thing. And then you'll flip over the card and reveal what you got. So it's going to be between 1 and 9. So maybe I flipped up a 4, let's say. And then my partner flipped up a 7. So whoever has the lowest number will activate the special action of the card. Each card will have at the top an action that can get activated. So because I got the lower number, I get to activate that action. And depending on which side I'm on, I can do different things. Now, if I'm on the scientist side, I can tranquilize one of the baby raptors. Kind of put it to sleep, or I can tranquilize the mother, trying to get her to slow down as well. If there's a baby that is currently put to sleep, I can scoop him up and bring him back to the lab. So then that's one thing I can do. I can move, so there's different things that I can do. Now, because as the mom raptor, I can also move, I can attack a scientist, I can manipulate the babies as well. There's different things that you can do. I can kind of put out fires if there's fires that's been lit and stuff like that. And then for the person who got the higher number, what they'll do is they'll take their numbers. In this case, I said it was a 7, and subtract the lower number that got played this round. So in this case, a 3, or did I say a 4? A 4. So then the difference is how many of your regular actions that you can activate. So in that case, that'd be 3. And it's so neat. So now if you're the mama raptor and you've been tranquilized, that's actually you're going slower, so that number of actions that you do. If you've been tranquilized once, one is just like to kind of get going, so you lose an extra action as well. The board is really neat because you have this, like, all this circle, and then you kind of build up the board, and then you have, like the little raptors, and you have the little scientist minis on the board. It looks cool. This is a really neat game. In the conversation and connection potential, I give this one a 3. As you're playing, you'll have some conversation, because a lot of what you're doing, you'll keep secret anyways, so not everything's going to be revealed, right? In the getting to know you, I give this one a 2. Again, a lot of what gets happening, you're not going to reveal what you're trying to accomplish, so there's there's a little bit that'll get revealed that you'll learn from your partner, but maybe not everything. Hurt feelings and conflict, I'm going to give this one a 2 as well, just because, yes, it's a conflict game, so you should expect for them to kind of try to come after you. If you're playing as the mama raptors, the person you're playing with is going to try to steal your baby, so you should be aware of this. And that's why I give that rating for this one. So that was my number 3, Raptor. In number 2, I have Legendary Encounters. Now, there's a lot of different ones in the Legendary game. You can have Marvel Legendary, the Legendary James Bond Legendary Encounters, Predator Legendary Encounters, Aliens. There's a Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I believe. There's Big Trouble in Little China, I do believe as well. There's a lot of different themes that you can play as. My favorite is the Aliens. We've recently, the last few years, kind of watched the whole series, and because of that, it's like I really relate to the theme of it, and it is very thematic. So you can kind of pick whatever theme that most appeal to you, and then the ones related to the movies, kind of like the artwork is screenshots of the movies, so it's really neat. Now, in the Legendary Encounters, this is a cooperative game, so you are working together against the game. And it can be very tricky and very challenging. But it's very satisfying. It's a lot of fun as well. So you have your deck of cards. It's a deck building game. And then you'll either be able to recruit some new cards into your hand, so you're kind of recruiting new team members into your cause, or you can attack. And what's really interesting, so in the Alien Encounters that I like, you have the cards, like on your turn, you'll move one of the bad cards over along the ship, basically, but they stay face down. And so you don't know what's coming up unless you're able to scan the room, and you scan the room and it'll tell you what's there. Maybe it's an alien, maybe it's different things like that. And then you got to try to destroy that card before it reaches the combat zone. Now, if it reaches the combat zone, it's just every round that card, while in the combat zone, is going to attack you. So eventually, if you don't destroy those cards, it will destroy you. And then what's really thematic about this one, so if you've watched the Alien movies, it all starts when they came across these weird egg-looking thing, and somebody got close, and this egg kind of exploded and had a face hugger attached itself onto one of the character of the movie, onto its face, and it's covering up their whole face, and they're trying to kind of figure out how to get this off, and then eventually it comes off, and then the person seems okay. But it actually got impregnated with an alien that's growing inside of them, and eventually it'll burst out of their chest. So if you ever come across a face hugger along the thing, this card will then go to your character, and you have until your turn again to make sure that this gets destroyed. Now, this is cooperative. The other players can help you destroy them as well. If it doesn't get destroyed before your turn comes about again, then this face hugger becomes a chest burster. And now you have a chest burster card that goes into your discard pile. No big deal. It's in the discard pile, so you don't have to worry about it. But eventually, you're going to use up all your cards. You're going to have to take your discard pile, shuffle it up, and that's going to be your new draw pile. So at some point, you're going to draw a chest burster, and when you have to play, then the alien bursts out of its chest, and then you die. So just the dramatic, like, and the suspense that it creates is just so neat. And I mean, like, it's such an intense game. I love it. It's so good. Now, conversation and connection potential, I'm going to give this one a 3. You're looking at your cards, this is what you're going to do. You can hold a conversation. You're probably going to be discussing the game mostly, but just because it's such an exciting game, but you could take some time and have a bit of a conversation in between some stuff about your day or what's going on in your life. Getting to know you, I'm giving this one a 3 as well. It's interesting to see how they're gonna make the decision on what they're, now you can discuss this with each other, of course. Okay, I've got this much, I could do this and try to scan that room, or I could kill that one before it reaches the like the battleground area, or, so you can, so just seeing how they decide what they're going to do is interesting. Hurt feelings and conflict, I'm giving this one a 1. You guys are on the same team. This game is going to be beating you up, so you got to work together. So no time for really having hurt feelings here. Plus, there's only so much you can do. Are you recruiting cards into your deck, or are you attacking something? And it's really going to be based on what you have the ability to do. So it's not going to be like, well, what can you, they've done this. It's like, well, because I didn't have those cards. So I've given this one for the hurt feelings and conflict a 1. And that was my number 2, legendary encounters. So my number 1 game for what's been reviewed with the games and couples so far is Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. This one is neat. Now this one is a campaign game, which is something that I'd like to do with my partner. Campaign games are really interesting, where you start and the story progresses and you go further and further, and you get this sense of accomplishment as you're doing it. And it's difficult to get to the table because you need to have people that are going to dedicate to doing this with you again and again. And that's where I find your spouse is by far the best option, because those are the people you're going to have at home, readily available to do something like this. So, and then it's such a great activity, something that you guys will accomplish together, and like in the satisfaction of to your downs, like, okay, well, we beat this, it's done, it's like, and it's something you did together and overcome together, I guess. So I like that for that. Now with Gloomhaven, it's basically a fantasy dungeon crawl, and then the story aspect is very interesting. So something's happening in the city, and you're investigating, and you're going through getting to the bottom of it, and it's neat, so you'll come across monsters that you have to destroy and all that sort of stuff. There's 40 different characters that you can play as in this one, and you'll have your cards. Now your cards, you have the top portion, the bottom portion that you get to activate, and you'll pick 2 cards and activate 1 top portion, 1 bottom portion. And what's great with the Jaws of the Lion is that the first 5 scenarios are meant to teach you the whole aspect of the game, because there's a lot going on in this game. There's a lot to consider and keep in mind. And if you were going to play this game and say, okay, here's all the rules, it would be a lot to handle. But with scenario 1, you learn how to navigate the map, and in scenario 2, you'll start to learn how to use some of the special abilities that you can activate, and it slowly builds up so that you get the full aspect of what you can do in this game. Really, really neat game. So in the conversation connection potential, I'm going to give this one a 3. This isn't a game that you necessarily have to rush through. You can take your time, and then as you're playing, selecting your card, you can have some conversation. But it's fairly neutral. It's not also one that you can talk on and on and on, because you do have a game and a scenario to accomplish here. In the getting to know you, I'll give this one a 3. It's interesting to see. You don't get to discuss which card you're going to draw, so you don't plan out what you're going to do necessarily before you have your cards. And once you have your cards, you know, like you can, okay, this is what, then you can start deciding, say, well, I'll go attack this monster. If you're able to attack this one, it's like, I didn't take any attack cards, so maybe don't send me that way, you know, or so, and you can have those conversations, kind of figure out how you want to do things, and so that gives you the opportunity to kind of get to know a little bit about your partner. Hurt feelings and conflict I give this one a 2 out of 3. This is a cooperative game. You're on the same side working towards accomplishing and kind of beating this particular scenario. Now I'm giving this a 2 instead of a 1 because when I've been playing this, my character particularly more concentrates on giving abilities to the other players that are around them. So I can heal people that are around me, or I can give them the ability to attack, an extra attack, and so on. So it's interesting because of that. And then, you know, but then you don't discuss which card to pull out. And then what would happen is every time I say, okay, great, I'm going to do this action, and I get to activate this so that he can actually attack by an extra 4. And that'll be great. And I can, you know, give this ability to anybody that's within 3 spaces of me, and then he moves 5 spaces away from me. And it's like, well, there goes my plan. So now you have to look at the cards because you've selected your cards now. You can't change the cards you picked. And now you got to look at everything all over again and trying to figure out what you're going to do now, because your plans kind of got all completely changed because you just moved out of range. And that happened to us a lot. And then all of a sudden he's like, okay, well, I'm going to move here. It's like, oh, of course you are. And the cards that you select kind of has a number on it that's going to determine who gets to activate their action first. So it's such a neat game, though. I really, really enjoy this, and this is why Gloomhaven is my number 1 game. So be sure to check out Games and Couples on Facebook. As I mentioned, I'll share their link onto the description. Be sure to check out the Games of the Week that gets posted every week, and those gets posted every Wednesday. And then on the last Friday of the month is when the video series game night, date night is posted as well. So that's it for episode number 27. Next week we're going to be doing episode 28, and it'll be back with both me and Carla. And we haven't really discussed this yet, so I'm not sure yet what the topic is about, but I'm sure it's going to be great. So be sure to tune in. And thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.